you, Bob. Thank you, Bob, to all your help. You are our website guru. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alana Rivadeneira. I'm chair of the HHW Technical Council, and I want to thank you for joining us this morning to view our webinar on HHW Hot Topics, pharmaceutical and sharp take-back legislation and ordinance updates, plus refillable 1-pound gas cylinders, which is a topic gaining momentum. So a bit on the HHW Technical Council. We are one of many technical councils that are part of the California Resource Recovery Association. And the goal of this council is to provide a forum for universal and household hazardous waste prevention, management, extended producer responsibility, and share our resources. Participation in the Technical Council is open to both CRRA members and non-members. Please visit the website at www.hhwtc.org for more information on the Council, joining CRRA, and some great resources for fellow professionals in our field. If you're interested in being involved in the Technical Council, please fill out a contact info sheet on the website. We'd love to work with you.
And Alana, this is Bob, just a quick tip if we could. Up in the top of the corner where it says view, you can maybe change that to full screen.
Okay.
Beautiful, beautiful, thank you.
So, thanks, Bob. Our Technical Council is hosting a free topic lunch next Monday for the CRRA conference in Sacramento. So please join us Monday, August 8th from 12:15 to 2:15 at El Torito Restaurant, which is a very quick walk from the Doubletree where the conference is being held. We're going to have guest speaker Josh Simpson of Keen's Propane to discuss his work on refillable gas cylinders. Please RSVP to me, and this information is also available on our TEC website. So we have some great speakers on today's webinar. For pharmaceuticals and sharps legislation and ordinances, we have Tim Gontroff with the County of Santa Cruz. For various perspectives on refillable gas cylinders, we have Heidi Sanborn from the California Product Stewardship Council, Manuel Medrano with the City of Chula Vista, and John Barnett from U-Haul. So first up is Tim Gontroff.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is Tim Gontroff from the County of Santa Cruz in California. There has been a great deal of activity, not just in California, but all across the country on drug and sharps take back. So we're going to give you a quick overview, focusing on what's been happening in California, but also touching on some of the national activities. And if there are details that you want to come back to, we can do that during our question and answer session at the end. Next slide, please. Alana, can we get the next slide?
You can use the arrow keys on your keyboard.
There we go. Okay, thank you. Okay, what you see in the picture here is an example of a drug take-back kiosk at one of the pharmacies here in Santa Cruz County. They vary a little bit, but for the most part, this is what they look like. They come in a few different sizes. This is one of the medium sizes. They can be customized for various settings depending on the amount of space you have. The signage you see is particular to Santa Cruz County, but it's fairly typical. All of these bins have signage explaining what can and can't go in the bin. And I want to talk about the existing ordinances just a bit. Alameda County was the first in California to enact a drug take-back ordinance. They were followed pretty quickly by San Francisco, and not long after by the other counties you see listed there. You'll notice that most of these are in Northern California. The movement is gradually spreading south. There is a similar ordinance pending before the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors. It's due to come back to them in November. We'll be talking a little bit more about that. There are similar ordinances in the works in Sonoma, Mendocino counties, and a few others, as well as a great deal of activity in other states, which I'll be talking about in a minute. I want to stress that the most significant way that these ordinances are different from all of our other waste diversion ordinances is that this is the first attempt at true extended producer responsibility legislation, sometimes referred to as EPR, in the United States. Extended producer responsibility is an attempt to share the responsibility for waste disposal with the producers of products that are difficult to dispose of, and they're not more difficult than drugs and sharps. So this is an attempt to bring those very profitable industries to the table to help us with the waste disposal issues, and we've had quite a bit of success so far, and I'll tell you more about that. Next slide, please. Okay, I want to give you a quick background on the litigation. It was no surprise that Alameda County's ordinance was quickly hit with a lawsuit by the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturing Association, the industry's representatives. The county prevailed in federal court. The industry appealed. The appellate court for the 9th District also upheld the ordinance. The manufacturers raised various constitutional grounds which the court did not find persuasive. They then appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, which declined to hear the case. That means that the prevailing law in the United States is that such EPR ordinances are legal, that they conform with the Constitution, and that there's no reason we can't go forward with these or similar local ordinances or state laws. I want to talk a little bit about some recent legislation in California and then beyond on related issues. There's been a lot of activity. What you see listed here are just a few of the most examples of legislation recently. Senate Bill 1523 was kind of a backdoor attempt to preempt at least some of the measures included in these ordinances. It would have specifically excluded, for example, over-the-counter medicines, which most of our ordinances specifically include because they are a large part of the bulk of leftover medicines that people are looking to dispose of. And like prescription medicines, without such take-back programs, they lack good and safe disposal mechanisms. So we feel it's important to include these. As that bill worked its way through the legislature, it was substantially amended until all that was left of it was a directive to the State Department of Toxic Substances Control to study the issue and report back with recommendations next year. That's something we can certainly live with. Assembly Bill 45 was a more troubling bill. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail on this because Heidi's going to give you a little more information when she speaks. It went through quite a few iterations, so it's a little challenging to characterize. In its early version, it would have preempted all of these take-back ordinances, and it would have required every jurisdiction in California to set up door-to-door collection systems for not just drugs and sharps, but all household hazardous wastes. Obviously, that was pretty alarming to those of us who run such programs. It did ultimately fail, and Heidi will share more information about that. This next bill, that should actually say SB 1229. This was a Senate bill introduced by Senator Hannah Beth Jackson. And this is an important bill because it addresses the concerns that pharmacies and collectors have about potential liability from participating in such programs. So this bill provides them protection from liability and will hopefully give them a greater sense of comfort in participating in these programs, which in most of our jurisdictions is still voluntary, so that's important. And we have an update on this bill just from this morning. It passed the Assembly today. It will now go back to the State Senate for concurrence on the final version of the bill, and we expect that it will probably pass. Quick note on activity in other states. 2 counties in the state of Washington, King and Snohomish counties, have passed similar ordinances to the ones in California. The one in King County is particularly well along. We're in regular contact with them. Cook County in Illinois, where Chicago is also moving in that direction. And there have been efforts at statewide bills in Rhode Island, Connecticut, and New York with various success. We certainly expect to hear more. I wanted to particularly mention the Massachusetts bill, which has been quite successful. If you're interested in learning details about this, this is Massachusetts Bill H4053. One of the things that's very interesting about their bill is that it's not restricted to drug take-back. It very specifically outlines the nexus between the national opioid epidemic, about overdoses, and about the lack of safe and proper drug take-back mechanisms. So that bill will probably serve as a good model for other statewide legislation, and we'll be watching that closely. Similarly, lots of activity on the federal level, and I want to go back just briefly to the Secure and Responsible Drug Disposal Act of 2010. That really jump-started some activity on the federal level and prompted a number of the federal regulatory agencies to update their rules in ways that are somewhat helpful, in other ways less so. I'll come back to that. But much more recently, and very pleasantly surprising given the lack of action in Congress on many pressing issues, was the passage of the Comprehensive Addiction and Recovery Act, which, like the Massachusetts bill, talks about the overdose epidemic, the severe national problem of overuse of opioids, but also specifically talks about drug take-back. And I want to quote for you just briefly a section from CRRA on that issue. It says, this section authorizes the Attorney General, in coordination with the Administrator of the DEA, the Secretary of Health Services, and the Director of ONDCP to coordinate with state, local, and tribal law enforcement agencies, as well as pharmacies and others, to develop or expand disposal sites for unwanted prescription medications. So this is a statement of policy that says the federal government is on board at least with our intentions, and that's a very important statement. In the regulatory arena, all of the federal agencies are working to update their regulations to conform with these bills. They are not moving in lockstep. The Drug Enforcement Administration, for example, is still encouraging people to flush leftover medications, among other things. The Environmental Protection Agency, not surprisingly, is appalled at that, as are many of us. It's obviously not the best way to maintain the health of our marine environments. More recently, the Federal Department of Transportation has been drafting rules governing the collection and transport of leftover medications. So we're following that closely and working with them to try to make sure that these rules are practical for those of us who have programs. And as I mentioned, in California, the Department of Toxic Substances Control is beginning the process of developing their own rules. And if we could go to the next slide, please. In California, probably the most important regulatory body in this area is a little-known state agency called the California State Board of Pharmacy. They are charged with overseeing the functions of pharmacies and pharmacists in California to protect the health and safety of Californians. They have been holding hearings and drafting regulations on drug take-back programs for several months now. A number of us have been participating in these hearings, commenting on the various drafts. They've gone through numerous iterations, but I want to talk about a few of the things that all of the versions share. First, they're focusing only on drug take-back. They're not addressing sharps at this time. A provision that is still in the most recent version of the Board of Pharmacy regulations is that pharmacists have the option of opting out of local mandates if, in their professional judgment, they feel that they cannot comply with those laws. Obviously, those of us who have ordinances mandating participation are troubled by that, and we, along with the board's legal counsel, are encouraging them to drop that provision, but they're holding tight to it so far. A lot of pharmacies are located in larger stores, grocery stores, department stores, etc., and often those pharmacies have shorter hours than the stores in which they're located, so the regulations require that those bins be locked once the pharmacy closed. There was a lot of back and forth on that, but I won't get into those arguments. And there are provisions that the pharmacy staff must supervise collection. A lot of our discussion has been what exactly does that mean? And we've agreed so far that this does not involve any hands-on participation. They just need to observe and document that things were collected properly. There are a number of other issues with the proposed regulations, but I think rather than get into details on that right now, in the interest of time, I'll encourage you to check the Board of Pharmacy's website, which you can see at the bottom of your screen. They are a little slow to post the updated versions of their regulations, but you will see them there, along with a calendar for when you can comment and when the next hearing will be. I encourage you to look those over, send comments. If you can, participate in the hearings. They are webcasts, so you can watch them remotely if you need to. Next slide, please. Okay. Controlled substances have been a challenging issue for those of us with take-back programs. Until very recently, federal law and regulations provided that only law enforcement officers could be involved with the take-back of controlled substances. This applied to both take-back bins and take-back events. In many of your jurisdictions, you've probably had take-back events where local law enforcement participated, and that's great. So as we were setting up these take-back programs, like the one in Santa Cruz County, we installed bins at all of our police departments, all of our county sheriff stations, and included in our publicity that if you have controlled substances, common painkillers, for example, like Vicodin, oxycodone or OxyContin, methadone, for example, the only legal place to dispose of those was at these bins at law enforcement agencies. Now, fortunately, the federal rules on this are evolving. It looks like we're going to be able to commingle these medications with other medications in pharmacy bins. The state rules on this are not yet complete, so we're still following the old rules for now. But things should get a lot simpler and less confusing for consumers in the near future, and a little easier for those of us who run such programs. Next slide, please. I want to talk just a little bit about the sharps issue. Most of the existing ordinances are silent on sharps. Some of us who came along a bit later realized that sharps disposal shares a lot of the same issues that afflict the disposal of leftover drugs. They are problematic to handle. They are difficult to dispose of safely and properly. Opportunities to safely dispose of them are pretty limited, and often quite expensive. And there's a lot of confusion among consumers about how to handle these. At the same time, we were struggling with improper disposal of sharps in many of our jurisdictions. They're turning up in public spaces, parks, beaches, etc. So there was a real outcry to do something about this. So in some of the ordinances, like the one here in Santa Cruz County, sharps were specifically included. And the way that works here is that in most of the locations where there is a take-back bin for medicines, there is a take-back bin right next to it for sharps. And they look like the one you see here, although the size varies a little. They're bright red, they're clearly labeled to make sure that people can easily distinguish them from drug bins. They have explanatory information on the signage that you don't see here. Alameda County, which was the first to pass the drug take-back ordinance, went back and amended their ordinance to explicitly include sharps. The ordinance that's pending in Los Angeles County also includes sharps, and we expect to see more of that in the future. The bin you see in the photo here is in a public location near the courthouse in Santa Cruz County. It's actually a drive-up location. It's been very popular. There are a lot of folks who use sharps for diabetes medication or other purposes and need a convenient way to drop them off. So this has been very helpful. Those of our ordinances that include sharps provide that pharmacies that wish to can provide mail-back services rather than hosting a bin. I'll say more about that in a minute. And an important issue is the sharps take-back containers. These are for sale in pharmacies, but they're expensive, and that has discouraged their use. So in our ordinance, it provides that all sales of sharps must include a safe take-back container at no additional cost. Next slide, please. As I said, mail-back options are popular. If for any reason a pharmacy is not comfortable hosting a sharps take-back bin, they can provide prepaid, pre-addressed mail-back containers to their customers. It's a more expensive option. The postage and handling on these containers is pretty expensive, but nevertheless we have a number of pharmacies who are using them, and it is a good, safe option. So keep that in mind. Onward, next slide please. Okay, I want to get just very quickly into the nuts and bolts of how this take-back process works. The ordinances specify that the industry shall designate a stewardship organization to represent them in enacting these programs, so we don't have to deal individually with hundreds or even thousands of pharmaceutical producers. There are a number of such stewardship organizations working around the world, and we had thought there might be competing organizations in California, but it has emerged that the industry prefers to work with just a single group, the Pharmaceutical Product Stewardship Working Group, or PPSWG. All of those with ordinances have been working with their representatives to develop plans, and a couple of counties have now accepted stewardship plans from PPSWG outlining how the programs will work. The rest of us are still in discussions, but we're making good progress, and we expect to have agreements soon. I want to stress that those of us with ordinances are working closely together to make sure that our programs work similarly, that we're providing a united front when speaking to the industry and their reps. So those of you who might adopt ordinances later, keep that in mind. And we do anticipate that statewide legislation will return, so watch for that. You can go forward, please. Okay, and the next slide. Go ahead, Alana, the next one. There. Oh, okay. So I'm going to turn this over to Heidi now. She's got a little bit more detail on some of this. I invite you to submit your questions, and feel free to get in talk with me if you want to talk individually. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Tim. So I'll just proceed. So we're almost at 11 o'clock. I'm going to try and go through these pretty quickly and leave it up to you to answer questions or ask questions so that we are only really focusing on what you would like us to focus on. So Alana, go ahead with the next slide, please. So this is our board. I always like to start with who is the California Product Stewardship Council Board. We have a 14-member board, and we have local governments all in our executive committee at this point. But we do have 5 private sector members as well. Look, if you want to know more about who we are and what we do, we have a great website at www.calpsc.org. Next slide. And our mission is to shift our waste management system from government and ratepayer financed through to a producer responsibility approach, not just to reduce public costs, but also to drive improvements in product design. Because if they have to pay for end-of-life costs and not externalize those onto government and ratepayers, they will work to get those costs down. That's what companies do. Next slide. So I just wanted to highlight this because LA County spent an awful lot of time on getting the research about what was going on in the county before they introduced their ordinance. And one of the things they did, and other counties have done that we have worked with, including San Mateo and Santa Clara, is do a survey, a short survey, asking what are people doing now with their medicines and sharps, and what do they want to be doing with them. And it's absolutely across the board the same sorts of responses, that in the 80% plus range, people believe the producers should have to pay for some share of responsibility for these products, and it should be convenient for them, and they want to return it to where they got it. That's just intuitive to them. So if you want to go get the information, that's on the National Stewardship Action Council website. The survey is on the home page from this slide. You can actually just click it, and it'll take you to the results of that survey. If you want to do a survey like that, just let us know. We're happy to share how we've done it very quickly and very affordably through MailChimp. Next slide. So we want to thank Walgreens because they made the announcement that in California first, and I'm sure it's due to all of the activity here, that they were going to roll out these medicine bins in their 24-hour stores. That is not the majority of their stores. Most of their stores are not 24 hours, and it's been a problem. And I would like to encourage all of you, if you've got one of these 24-hour stores in your area, to go in and look at those bins. Because when I went to the one in Citrus Heights here in California, the bin was locked. I asked the pharmacy staff what was happening, and they said it fills in 1 to 2 days, and they don't control the collection, and apparently it's only scheduled for once every 2 weeks. So the vast majority of time when people come in, they're getting a locked box. That's not good PR for the program. They'll go walk right out front, throw them in the trash. Although we're extraordinarily grateful to Walgreens to starting this, it really is not enough, and this is what we've said all along, is it's got to be made more convenient. It should be as convenient to recover as it was to buy. But we do thank them, and I urge you to check yours locally on how it's working. Next slide. So LA County, the action that happened this year was 5 delays of the hearing, and finally what happened, that's Craig in the picture, Craig Hampel from City of Burbank, a real trooper, went and testified and spent lots of days there waiting, as the rest of us did, trying to testify with all the delays. And in the back of the room was, I call a pack of lobbyists from the pharma industry at that last hearing. One of them was an ex-legislator, so they took this very seriously, put a lot of money fighting the ordinance in LA, and they were successful at getting a delay of 6 months. And as of this morning, I have been told by folks in LA County that the Sheriff's Department has been approached by pharma and offered $1 million to host bins so that the industry does not have to do the program. And the Sheriff's Department cannot figure out why they are doing this. If they're going to pay for it anyway, why don't they just do it themselves and control the costs? But there's all kinds of funny strategies and things going on out there. So we'll see what happens in LA. They're scheduled to bring it back in November, and we will see if it comes back as a whole EPR ordinance. But Sheila Kuehl is very clear that she wants it. Supervisor Kuehl, and by the way, that's misspelled on there, and I'm sorry about that. She said she wants a high bar ordinance, even if it takes until 2017 to get it. Next slide. So Snohomish County, Washington was the second county in Washington in literally the hour after LA delayed taking up the ordinance. They voted unanimously to pass it. And this is a much more conservative county than King, which has Seattle in it. So Snohomish has got a health district that has the authority to pass an ordinance countywide. And if you have any questions about what the ordinance looks like, et cetera, I've got the website there. But again, the march continues on these ordinances. Next slide. And then the next week, Santa Barbara was number 9 and passed it. They had been really kind of watching LA and finally got tired of watching LA delay, so they just went ahead and got a 4-0 vote. Actually, I believe it's a 4-1 vote now that I think about it. I have to change that slide. But that was the first no vote we've had in a single county. All of them have been unanimous until this one in Santa Barbara. Next slide. And then Cook County, Illinois took up an actual public discussion about a EPR ordinance for pharmaceuticals only yesterday. I hear from the staff they had an unbelievably great list of supporters come up to the microphone and share their experiences and why it was important to them. There was no vote taken, and we are going to get the video of the hearing and we'll post it on the California Product Stewardship Council pharmaceutical web page so that you can see that. And I will send it out in our on our pharmaceutical listservs as well, which only our members are on. Next slide. But we will make it public on the website. And as Tim mentioned, we have the National Stewardship Action Council is now our C4 affiliated organization that can do unlimited lobbying and give to campaigns and all that kind of stuff, endorse candidates like Supervisor Nate Miley for Alameda. And we sent in a letter with CPSC and a bunch, 119 groups saying, please end the flush list. Now, unfortunately, the internal communication I've got from people at the FDA is they've had big talks about it, and they're not going to end it. So they've given us some suggestions on how to step this up and do a broader campaign, and we're going to. So I will, but we have to get through the CRRA conference. So as soon as we get through that, we're going to work on a campaign, and hopefully all of you can follow us on our CPSC and Don't Rush to Flush pages and the NSAC page so that we can all start working on a campaign together when we see what that looks like. Next slide. And we've been working ongoing at CPSC on our voluntary, or what we call transitional to producer responsibility program called Don't Rush to Flush, Meds in the Bin, We All Win. And we got an award for this PSA in Sacramento a couple years ago, and it continues to grow. Next slide. And we hope you follow us, by the way, on those social media pages. But we've got more and more bins going out under this program all the time. So, in fact, today we're going to go down and see the 3 latest ones we did in Madera County, and then go across to Monterey. And tomorrow we're going to have a meeting. We'll hopefully cite 5 more bins in Monterey with Rose Grant money. And we ask that the hosts pay for some disposal, or if they don't, the cost of hosting the bin, they have to manage it, call it in, make sure it's labeled properly, et cetera. So there are costs, and we'd like to see more in the product chain pay the costs, even if we can't get the producers at the time. Next slide. And we've even had a supervisor in Contra Costa County, Supervisor Mary Pifo is pictured there with the bin in her office. Now that is a non-controlled only bin, but we were frustrated trying to cite bins and with the pharmacies, because at the time the Board of Pharmacy hadn't passed the rules, and she was so excited about the program that she wanted to promote it. So, and we do a lot of social media, and again, you can follow and see the new locations if you're following us on Facebook or Twitter. Next slide. And as Tim mentioned, AB 45 evolved into a local government ordinance preemption bill. I can tell you that I do not think that's the last time we are going to see an attempt to preempt local governments, because at the federal and state level is where the manufacturers have the most influence. At local is where they have the least. And they know that this is where we're being successful, or you're being successful, I should say, folks like Tim and so forth working so hard, doing those ordinances and getting them done and implementing them, that they don't want that to happen anymore. So they're going to try and prevent that from happening. And this bill was whittled down to just focusing on LA, but they gave us only literally less than 2 days notice. It had 6 months to be amended, and they waited 2 days before the hearing to amend it to just preempt Los Angeles. But they were not successful. And what that shows me is that the local governments, when you all organize, you can beat back these kinds of attempts even by very, very powerful lobbies, and to all of your credit. So now hopefully we can start having a healthier discussion that's not so combative and simply just telling people what they can't do. And the next slide. This is where it gets exciting. Now, one of the slides I forgot to add here before this one was about the Sharps bill. We had Assemblymember Ting, who's pictured here on the left. He actually carried AB 2039, which is a CPSC bill this year, trying to get EPR for needles again. And we couldn't even get out of the first committee this time. Last time we were all the way to the other house. And it seems as though they were making progress at convincing legislators that this was crazy, government should take care of all the stuff at the back end. And so we just decided that we were approached actually by Eli Lilly. That's why I put the Lilly logo there. And to their credit, they said, you know, we don't want this AB 45 approach. We want to work on something collaborative. But we need to get our colleagues in the industry to agree to a set of facts about the problem. And why don't we ask for the state auditor, who's unbiased, just looks at the facts and comes back to reports to the legislators about what's the latest on all these programs, what works, what doesn't, and maybe make some recommendations to the state. These cost several $100,000, these studies. They're not, it's a big ask of the state. But because we signed a letter along with Eli Lilly, and then these three awesome members, we had Assemblymember Ting, Senator Jackson, who carried the pharma bill, and then Assemblymember Adam Gray from the Central Valley, all say, you know, let's ask for this audit. Let's get some facts together, the most current data, and put it all in one place. And the state said yes. So they've already started that report. We've been pinged for some questions and answers and some information, but some of you may be too. So especially those that have already implemented ordinances as to what's working, what isn't, what would you do differently, et cetera. So hopefully they'll come back in January, February, and we will have some basis to then set the table for a negotiation that would be a statewide and hopefully national solution. So that's exciting, and that's new, and that's not happening anywhere else in the country. Next slide. So that's really it for the pharmaceuticals and Sharps part. I could get into way more detail, but I really want to honor the fact that we've got a national U-Haul representative ready to talk to you, and we have Manuel to come after me. So I want to go right into the ReFuel Your Fun campaign. We have worked with multiple local governments, and thanks to Cal Recycle grants through their funding, have been able to create this campaign called ReFuel Your Fun. We've got a whole social media page, logos, data, and it's all pre-packaged. It's all ready to go, even TV commercials for all of you to use. And we've been out recruiting not only local stores to carry these 1-pound refillable propane cylinders, but to exchange and refill them, and to also the national stores. And we are seeing huge progress now. So we've gone from 0 locations carrying these in California to 156 retailers in less than 22 months. And if you want to know if one is near you, you can go to the map at refillyourfun.org. And if you don't have any near you, then let's work together and give you the tools so you can go out and recruit the stores that you'd like to see carry and refill near you. Next slide. So we put together some information about the parks. This poster board is one we use in Yosemite. They're disposing of 23,000 a year just in that one park. And it's such a waste, single-use materials. And just like our 5 gallons that we use for barbecue grills, it's just kind of standard practice that we refill them and exchange them. We want to shift to that refill, not landfill method for the 1-pounders. That's our goal, is by 5 years from now, this whole country is completely evolved away from disposables. So let's put that vision in our minds and let's make it happen, because we're going to get there. I really believe we can. It's costing Yosemite $1.20 a tank to puncture those things, and then of course the energy to transport them and smelt them for just 20 cents of gas. It's absolutely not efficient. So we actually calculated cost savings over certain amounts of uses and refilling. After 50 uses, you can save $128, but these refillables last for 12 years. Lots and lots and lots of energy savings. 4 million a year are disposed of in California alone. So let's help refill and not landfill, and help us promote this new campaign. Next slide. So we did a PSA, thanks to Tim in Santa Cruz and some others that we worked with in Sunnyvale and Elk Grove. Tuolumne, I think we all worked on this one. We did a great commercial with John Laird, he was on the Waste Board, and now he's the Secretary of Natural Resources. He speaks Spanish, so we did this in English and a Spanish version, and we did it so it's customizable. The last slide is a map that can be customized and changed for anyone who wants to use this commercial. I think it took $24,000, $25,000 to do. And we did it on the beach at a very iconic park in Santa Cruz, where John is from, or the Secretary is from, I should say. And on the left, we've got Brownies and Girl Scouts and our Boy Scouts on the right, and they all helped because they do beach cleanups and they find these cylinders. So it's a great commercial, and we'd love for you to use it, and we're happy to help you customize the slide at the end with the map. We've got locations now that are near you that are selling and refilling the refillables. Next slide. And so our biggest win of the year, last year it was getting Camps Propane, which has 11 stores in California to carry these and really own the program with little campers. This year, we have to really thank U-Haul, because they're the largest national retailer of propane. They have warmly embraced this program. They are starting in California with all of their propane dealing stores have these refillables now that they're selling and refilling. 126 of them. And this picture was our kickoff press event with County Supervisor Don Natoli here in Sacramento at the facility here that's actually very close to our offices. And we have the video and the link there for you to watch. But it's wonderful to see U-Haul embrace. A lot of it is due to John Barnett, who is the propane program manager for U-Haul National, and he has a personal story as to why he's interested in this, and he'll tell you about that. Next slide. So what you can do is to help us expand this program and help us get rid of these single-use and evolve to these refillables. So, and that will save you money, it will save the customer money, it will save resources, GHGs, it's all a win-win. So what you can do is follow us on ReFuel Your Fun on the Facebook page, share the posts. If you want us to post some location, a U-Haul location near you that is now offering the refillables, we're happy to do that. You can post it and tag us, and we'll go ahead and reshare it on our page. There's lots of ways to help. Go talk to the retailers yourself. Let them know that they're available. We've got all the recruitment materials. And we have Josh Simpson with Camps Propane, who's been really helpful kind of explaining retailer to retailer how they can get involved with the program as well. So next slide. This will be, I guess we're going to turn this back to Manuel, and then John Barnett will come on from U-Haul and explain. But I do want to thank John and explain that U-Haul goes way beyond just gas cylinders. He's going to talk about briefly about their sustainability program as well. But for now, I will go ahead and turn it over to Manuel.
Well, thanks, Heidi. Great overview, great presentation. Manuel Medrano, I'm with the city of Chula Vista. We're a city of 260,000 residents, 50 square miles, about 4 miles north of the Mexican border. We're the true Southern California city. Go ahead and next slide. So we have a strong commitment to providing accessible universal waste disposal opportunities. We as I give you this will be a great overview of what is happening at the local level. In this case, we're a medium-sized city. So we started out by wanting to offer battery collection because we found that compared to other wastes collected, very low recycling or collection rate, I should say, rather than recycling rate in our program, in our household hazardous waste program. And I'm sure if we were to compare the sales in our city, we'd probably be even lower than what we have as far as collection, except it wouldn't be such an accurate way to measure it since we have a lot of cross-border commerce, a lot of shoppers coming up north to buy grocery supplies and stuff like that. But then we also were encouraged by California Public Stewardship Council and Heidi to also include single-use propane tanks as it's a new and emerging issue. Next. So we saw that yes, single-use small propane tanks are obviously not refillable, and we found them often in our waste stream. Fortunately, not illegally dumped, but a lot in our trash and our recycling carts because people saw obviously metal. Sometimes they weren't even empty. Folks would put it in recycling carts and recycling bins or trash carts and bins. So we wanted to do something about this and obviously take some of the momentum already created by CPSC and other cities. So go ahead and next. So we wanted to prevent this. As you can see, this Republic Services happens to be our franchise trash hauler, and this is not in Chula Vista, fortunately, but is what we're trying to prevent. And we've had a couple of what they call hot loads in Chula Vista in previous years. I don't know if we could attribute them to tanks, to small single-use tanks, but yeah, we were trying to prevent this from happening. As you know, I'm sure you know that they have to empty out the truck into the road, and then the fire department comes and has to kind of spread out all the whatever's in the trash or recyclables and start spraying them down. It's quite a bit of a mess. Not only also a stormwater pollution issue, and obviously has to be taken care of the proper way. Next. So the way that we developed this program is that again, California Public Stewardship Council or CPSC came to us and said, hey, we've done other grants in other jurisdictions. Why don't we work together on trying to get a grant to provide this program to your residents? So CalRecycle, or the California Department of Resources, Recycling and Recovery, offered the grant on their 25th cycle for household hazardous waste programs, and we applied with the help of CPSC. Again, somewhat of a framework already created in other cities, other jurisdictions, and it was easy to take something that was already been proven successful in other cities as far as developing the program, and then using or asking CPSC to help us out. Next. So we got the grant, and we went ahead and started out with the baseline evaluation, try to find out who in the city was selling both batteries, because it did include batteries, single-use batteries, and it also, the program also included a for the small cylinders, obviously. So in that, around that time, ReFuel Your Fun, the campaign came up online, and we obviously is going to be part of our program to promote the campaign. So in 2016, April 2016 of this year, CPSC came down to Chula Vista, and also city staff, myself, and another co-worker. We actually went and visited 50 different sites throughout the city. And for the batteries, we also used Call to Recycle, the program, to collect batteries at several of the retail sites, or that's what we were promoting or proposing to the retail sites throughout the city. Next. So it's relatively a new program. As Heidi mentioned, the U-Haul partnership was really great. 120 stores. I need to update this per her presentation. Now it's up to 126 if I remember correctly. This is the photo you see there. It's actually one of the stores that's about a mile from where I'm sitting now here in City Hall. They're offering, as you can see to the right there, the refillable tanks and the small tanks, obviously, right next to the regular, to the propane fill stations. As far as the batteries go, in this case, we also have a strong commitment from the two major big box stores, I guess, auto parts stores here in Chula Vista, AutoZone and O'Reilly's, they actually committed, and we're waiting to finalize things to be able to set those collection containers for batteries there. As you know, we as part of this full campaign, we outreach other major retail sites, some Harbor Freight Tools, Granger, and other big stores that are here in Chula Vista. Obviously, the usual answer from them was that we need to go back to our corporate offices to request to see if they could participate. But so far, we have a couple of good partnerships going, but we need more. And we're looking for independent, especially the tank exchange programs. There's a lot outside of convenience stores, gas stations, and also the non-conventional regional parks, campsites, and marinas that use these tanks for their recreational activities. Next. So outlook, once we get both programs or both battery and the propane tank program going, we want to make sure we advertise quite a bit. As of this morning, our supervisors wants us to go and advertise to the public, in a pretty big way to promote this retail take-back opportunity. And then also, obviously, because of the great funding that was provided by the state. Obviously, we want a bigger push for more collection sites, big box stores. As when it comes to a lot of these retail take-back, we want to make sure we participate. They have them participate. And big thing is we want to make sure we avoid missed or confusing messages. You see there, the photo is of a refill valve that's being sold, and we want to make sure that folks don't just say, well, why would we need to buy refillable tanks if we could just buy this? Well, this particular valve doesn't come with instructions, and there's another one offered in a major big box store that actually encourages folks to turn a larger tank over upside down and then have it fill the smaller tank. So we want to make sure that folks are not doing these unsafe and confusing practices when it comes to the best offer, which will be the exchangeable or the refillable small tanks, which are super easy. Some stores that offer it, just you go in with a container, and I'm sure Josh and other folks will talk about it. But yeah, we definitely want to make sure folks are tuned in to using the better option, which would be the refillables. Next. And that's it. That's me. Contact information, questions, I guess, will be at the end. I was trying to be brief because we're kind of almost running out of time. Thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, Manuel. And now we have our last speaker, John from U-Haul.
Hello, good morning, everybody. I'm John Barnett. I'm the program manager for U-Haul International. I'm actually in Phoenix, Arizona right now. That's where our home office is here for U-Haul. I just had about a year and a half ago recently took over the propane program for U-Haul. But before that, I was a California resident and grew up in California. So Heidi said that I got a story to tell. I do. I grew up along the coastline of California. I surfed up and down the coastline and used to do a lot of barbecuing with the little hibachi grills with the 1 pound disposable propane tanks, and seen them littered up around the coast and things like that. And just when I took over the program, I did a little bit of research and found that there's this refillable version of a 1 pound cylinder, and I thought that was awesome. At the same time, I got together with the California Product Stewardship Council, and they were talking about the grants that they have and everything, and I just thought it was an amazing idea. So this kind of hit home for me. It was a personal deal for myself, as well as hit a lot of the same things that U-Haul is about. I mean, we're a very sustainable company, and I'll just take a brief minute to talk about some of the things that we do. I mean, it goes all the way down to our primary business, which is our truck and trailer sharing program. I mean, many people know that we rent moving trucks, but that one truck that's on the road can take 12 gross polluters off of the road. And that just kind of goes along with our sustainability programs. Our furniture blankets that we rent and that we sell are made out of recycled denim. We have our Take a Box, Leave a Box program, which is basically, you know, as the customer is finished using their boxes, they'll bring them by to the U-Haul store, they'll drop them off, and then other customers can now pick up those boxes as well. All of our cardboard boxes are made out of recycled cardboard. And then our packing peanuts are made out of, they're all biodegradable. They're not styrofoam. You can actually eat our packing peanuts. A lot of our field men actually do that when they go and talk to some of the local city officials. And then we also have our reuse program for our buildings. Most of the buildings that you see a U-Haul location out of, they're repurposed buildings. One, for example, that comes to mind is the Sunshine Biscuit Factory in Oakland, California, that recently we took ownership of. And instead of bulldozing that and taking all of that concrete down and rebuilding something that, you know, we would like to have or something like that, we've actually just repurposed the building. We've been able to put, you know, storage in there, our U-Box program, and put the rest of our sustainable products inside that building without having to do a lot of demolition work for it. So the propane program just fits right alongside with the sustainable programs that U-Haul currently offers. We currently have approximately 200 propane-powered service vehicles that are across the system now, and we have 16 propane-powered rental trucks in Los Angeles County. So then that kind of goes back into, again, the propane, how sustainable propane is, and where we come up with our 126 stores that we're dispensing propane in the 1-pound refillables. Now, where I come in play is at this particular time, we've put a 1-pound refilling station at every store that currently dispenses propane in the state of California. Now, we started there because all of those stores have personnel that's at the store that has been trained in dispensing propane. We want to make sure that, and we stress the fact that we want people to dispense propane safely. We don't want to have any mishaps happening with it or any problems, because propane can be kind of dangerous if it's dispensed incorrectly. And so we want to make sure that everybody's safe. So right now I actually am working on a program with the Propane Education Research Council on a new training program to target the 1-pound refillables. This way somebody doesn't have to go through the entire CTEP program or entire propane dispensing propane safely for a 20-pound cylinder or an auto gas cylinder or a 100-pound cylinder if they're only going to be dispensing propane for a 1-pound cylinder. While I'm working on that, we're working on writing this program. We have locations in California that don't sell propane. At the present time, I'm working on adding an additional 35 locations that are corporate-owned stores that don't sell propane right now that will be selling these within the next month, I would say, that I'll have them up and running to sell the 1-pound refillables. In addition to that, we have two different types of stores. We have our corporate-owned U-Haul facilities, and then we have our U-Haul neighborhood dealers. Now, we haven't had a propane program available for our U-Haul neighborhood dealers in the past. This 1-pound refillable has now put us in a position where we can offer a propane program for our U-Haul neighborhood dealers. Now, we've got thousands of those in the state of California, and we'll be launching that program very soon, just finishing up some last-minute details on that to get that at our other non-corporate owned stores to actually add the 1-pound refillables to them. So I mean, really that's pretty much where we're at as a company and kind of like our rollout for California. Once we have finished our rollout in California, we'll be adding other states and eventually going nationwide and up into Canada with the 1-pound refillables. But there's a little bit that we still need to do in California before we can do a national rollout. I encourage everybody, if they're near a U-Haul location that does sell the propane and has these refillables, if they stop by and if they find that there's a problem or an issue or they just don't think that they are selling them, to give that feedback back to me. My email address is on the slide in front of you, and you can email me, hey, I went into this store, they didn't seem to know what this is about. I encourage that feedback because for many years we told all of our stores, and we've trained it, do not refill a 1-pound cylinder. So as there's several that do know what they're doing with this, there's still a few out there that are still kind of getting caught up with whether or not we're able to do this still. So with that, I guess we're going to open it up to questions. That's pretty much what I had.
Thank you, John, and thank you to all the speakers. I am going to...
And Alana, just so you know, earlier I saw some coming in, but I didn't want to interrupt the speaker. So there were a few I forwarded to Tim. I don't know if, Tim, if you've seen those or not. Yeah, it looks like Tim has answered a couple in writing. So if you pop your question box open, you'll see those questions and responses. And I'm going to go ahead and mute out again. Just let me know if you need anything.
I just saw that I had one too, Alana, and I can answer it, but I guess the gentleman who asked it left. Well, I guess Lawrence Kennemore Jr. asked if it seems like you're shifting costs from government to producers who will just increase the product cost to nothing, so nothing has been accomplished. Actually, that was proven actually not to be the case in the Alameda court case that was all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court and rejected by the Supreme Court. So the lower courts held that there was no burden on the industry. The pharmaceutical companies had sold, and they stipulated to this fact, almost $1 billion. I think it was $965 million worth of drugs into Alameda in 2010. The cost of the program, they agreed, was between $320,000 a year and $1.2 million, and they could not prove any cost burden. The countries that do have the program already are the countries where our seniors are going for their less expensive drugs, like Mexico and Canada. So that does not make any sense. The cost of drugs is going up for a lot of reasons, and it's not due to a pill program. They do not need to, there's lots of ways to absorb costs, and I think it's all over the news about the profit margins that these companies are, have, who the CEO pay, the marketing budgets are even much greater than the R&D budgets now. So that cost does not have to be passed on. Although they did threaten it would be $5 a prescription originally in San Francisco, which is of course absurd. We're talking literally less than a penny for every $10 sold. That was the fact that came out of the Alameda court case. So I just want to make sure I answered it, and I didn't want too much to type.
if I could add to that, this is Tim in Santa Cruz. One reason these issues have come up is that a lot of these programs are just getting started, and while we can project costs, it's hard to be really certain how expensive they're going to be before they've had some experience. I didn't really take time to talk about this before, but in our county we've been running a program at local expense for 8 years now. We have a wide network of take-back locations, more than 40, which is quite a bit in a pretty small county. And we know how much it costs. It's very inexpensive. And our numbers are in line with what Heidi's indicating, less than a penny for every prescription. So there really is no cost burden on the industry and no need to raise prices to offset the cost of disposal.
Okay.
Alana, if I may, there was another question that I answered in writing, but I'm not sure if everybody saw it, and it's an important one. Somebody asked where they could get copies of the ordinances, and the California Product Stewardship Council website is a great place to find that. If you go to calpsc.org, that's calpsc.org, you'll find copies of all of the existing California ordinances. You can look through those and find the one that best fits your circumstances, as well as contact information for all of us if you have questions about why one is different from another or how they're working out in practice, etc. So please make use of that resource.
Tim, can you elaborate on the barriers for smaller pharmaceutical companies to join those stewardship organizations?
Sure, I'll say a little about that. When we think about pharmaceutical manufacturers, we're typically thinking of the very large multinational corporations that produce hundreds or even thousands of different medications in huge quantities that they distribute all around the world. But that's not the only model. There are quite a few smaller companies that produce just a few very specialized medications. In some cases, only a single medication for a single relatively rare condition. These companies have a small number of customers. When you start sorting it out by county, sometimes you find they have 2 or 3, in some cases only 1 customer in a county, in some cases none at all. To join the industry's stewardship organization that we discussed earlier, there is a significant cost. They require payment to join and take advantage of the benefits of membership. Some of these smaller manufacturers don't feel like that's a good fit for them. Fortunately, all of the existing ordinances provide an alternative, as in fact does the Massachusetts law, which we discussed earlier. The smaller manufacturers, or in fact any manufacturer that doesn't care to join the industry's organization, can join another organization. They can start their own, or they can become stewards in their own right. They can work directly with the county or the state to develop a program that fits their needs. In the case of most of the small manufacturers that we've talked to so far, it looks like mail-back is a perfectly appropriate solution for any leftover medications that they produce. So we don't see this as a big problem, but it does need to be worked out on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. A question for Heidi. Where in Monterey County will the take-back bins be located?
Am I unmuted? Yes. So we aren't sure. That's when we have a kickoff meeting in a jurisdiction, and any of you can work with us on these programs. It's just a matter of funding to have a real focused project. We got a $25,000 grant. We're going to site 5 bins, and we're working. We've got a great meeting turnout. Everybody from the water sanitation agencies to the waste agencies to law enforcement to health department, pharmacists who already host bins, police departments that already host bins, and we're all going to talk tomorrow at lunch, because we always feed people. That's when they show up. And we're going to talk about, how is it going now, and where do we have gaps in the area, and where would you like us to cite these, and who can help us cite them, get to those people that we want to target so we have good coverage over the county.
If I could add something to that, CalRecycle is trying hard to be a clearinghouse for reliable, updated information about where consumers can get rid of leftover medications or sharps. If you go to the CalRecycle website and search for household medication waste disposal, you'll find maps and county-by-county lists of all the locations where you can drop those things off. It's a great resource. It's not always completely up to date, but they're working to keep it as current as they can, so you might check that out.
And Tim, I'll add to that too. Our Don't Rush to Flush website has a map of California, and if you have bins that you want added to that map, let us know. But the reporters that have been calling me actually looked at both CalRecycle's and ours and actually found ours easier to find stuff, unfortunately. I mean, I wish it was easier, but the state doesn't have the time, it looks like, to keep it super current. But both are an option. Sometimes it's easier to look at a map than a spreadsheet. Is that it?
Okay. There are some questions on the refillables. What other retailers are you trying to get on board? REI, Walmart, Target, etc.
All of the above, and we're very excited. I can't name names yet until they go public, but there are 2 very large retailers that have stores nationally who have told us that internally they have already made the decision to start selling online soon this fall and will be in stores by next January. But I can't tell you which ones. I can just say one's related to marine supplies, and the other one is related to an outdoor activities kind of store.
And if I may piggyback on that, a lot of the stores that sell or refill propane canisters are locally owned. They're small hardware stores, outdoor supply stores, and you probably all have many of these where you live and work. So feel free to reach out to them and ask, is this something you're interested in? If not, why not?
Yeah, because that does help us, and it helps them getting pressure, you know, from the customers is actually the most important kind of pressure, is the customers demand that kind of product, they'll carry it.
And we talked a little about the environmental advantages of the refillable canisters, which are pretty obvious, but they're also dramatically less expensive for the consumers, about 80% less expensive. So it's a real win-win for everybody involved.
Okay, a question from Manuel. Manuel, do you have the refillable gas cylinder information available in Spanish?
No, but not yet. We're working on translating it, and we'll make it available.
The commercial is available in Spanish, the one that John Laird did. So that is an option.
And just so you're aware, I am showing these sites as you're talking about them. So I have the ReFuel Your Fun site up right now on the screen for our audience, and I've also been showing the Don't Rush to Flush and Cal PSC.
Thanks, Bob.
Sure.
A question, what type of equipment is required for a retail site to become a refilling station?
I'll take that. It's basically, we want to encourage the stores that have existing propane to be the ones to refill. The reason is they've got all the hazardous waste permits, they have trained staff, they already deal with propane. When it comes to exchanging or selling, that's different. So a store, for example, like many Safeways will sell an entire shelf. I was in one in South Lake Tahoe, just unbelievable numbers of disposables. They could make them all refillables. They might have to go down the street to the U-Haul to get them refilled, but they don't need to be selling the single use. The retailers that are selling propane, like Blue Rhino, we've reached out to them. They've turned us down. They're not interested in refilling the 1-pounders. They don't see enough profit in it. Those are the ones that we need to get. AmeriGas has been another one. So if you've, talking to the retailers who use AmeriGas and use Blue Rhino, to the stores that you buy these from, the more pressure, the more people talking about it, because it doesn't make any sense. We do this for the 5 gallons. We need to do this for the 1-pounders. And that's it's. But the stores, I would not encourage stores who are not already propane dealers to be refilling, because it's a bigger deal, and that's something I would have Josh with Camps Propane actually explain the answer to that. Just a lot more detailed, so I would say not start there.
And just so you're aware, Josh left just as the questions were starting to come in on his subject, so someone else might need to cover those for the moment.
I can answer a little bit of that too, as far as equipment goes. Once you are trained and certified, takes a forklift cylinder and the adapter to go on the forklift cylinder with a deadman valve.
You're breaking up a little bit there, John, I think.
Sorry about that. I'm on a landline.
And if I may, just for a moment, as we're starting to lose some people, I just wanted to point out to everyone, if you're coming to the CRRA seminar or conference, coming up on August 8th, 12:15 to 2:15, again, El Torito, and that's all on the website right here at hhwtc.org. I just sent links out to the entire audience for each of the sites that we're talking about. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
Awesome. Thank you, Bob.
We would love to see you all at CRRA, and there'd be time to talk about this in a lot more depth.
Question on an ordinance. Are there any ordinances that differentiate between used and unused sharps?
Not that I'm aware of. This is Heidi. Sharps are sharps. So, I mean, typically people don't buy things to not use them, although that does happen. They still have to be disposed of exactly the same way.
I can share that I sometimes get calls from caregivers or family members of a medical sharps user. They have leftover sharps that were never used, and they would love to pass them on to somebody else who could make use of them, but legally it's very difficult to transfer any kind of medications from one person to another. So typically the only thing you can do is dispose of them just as if they were used.
Okay, there's a question for John. Who provides propane service for U-Haul?
Actually, we have several different suppliers. We do use all the majors. We are actually using Camps Propane at the present time. We're working on a deal with them, but we use various different suppliers for our propane suppliers.
Thank you. That pretty much covers the majority of the questions. If any of the panelists see something that they'd like to answer that hasn't already been answered.
I just want to thank you, Alana, for facilitating the call and being such a great chair of the technical council, and to John with U-Haul for being the first big national dealer to step up and make this available, and hopefully nationally soon, and to all of the people, including Bob Hollis, who always hosts our webinars for free and does such a great job. Thanks and for all of you to listening.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you
everybody.
all. So thank you, and see you all Monday at our topic lunch. Okay, thank you. Have a nice day.
Thanks, everyone.